So just as this traditional start of the TV season has gone the way of rabbit ear antennae, so too has the concept of Q1 as a time to start over with brand new marketing campaigns. The period known as Q5 is becoming a creative and lucrative way station that connects Q4 learnings and Q1 strategy for brands. Now, here to share CTV tactics that marketers can implement today to make the most of Q5 and beyond, I'm pleased to welcome to the stage Matt Collins, Mountain's Director of Product Marketing. All right, now first let's define our terms. So Q5 isn't a new concept. What do we mean by Q5 now, and why is a Q5 strategy gaining in popularity among advertisers?
Great question, and hi everybody. It's great to be back at City Winery. We define Q5 to mean the first calendar quarter of the next year. Some I've seen it defined, some will define it as more narrowly as the week between Christmas and New Year's, which that sounds exhausting to me to pack a quarter into a week. But we define it to be the first calendar quarter. And the putting the number 5 on it as opposed to the number 1, I think is meant to convey the notion that you're not restarting the clock. You're not going back to the starting line. It's a continuation of things that have been started and a practice that has been built and a learning that has been gaining momentum, hopefully, through Q4. But that does require some significant changes because the opportunity of Q5, which I'll talk a little bit about in a moment, is different than it is in the fourth quarter.
All right, so then what are the benefits so defining Q5 as you just did, what are the benefits of brands approaching the new year with a Q5 mentality as opposed to their usual Q1 approach?
It's a fundamentally different marketplace with dynamics that I think are easy to miss in the haze of eggnog and party hats that are residual from Q4. There are experts who predict that this year Americans will acquire $198 billion with a B dollars of gift cards this year. That works out to around $1,650 per household. And a lot of that then becomes free agent money in the quarter, in that first quarter, what we call Q5. It stands to reason that a lot of customers who find themselves holding this cash, this significant amount of money, these households, many of them may not know your brand. They may have been peripherally aware of it, they may have been exposed to some advertising, but you may not have thought about reaching them, they may not have thought about really engaging with a particular brand. This moment calls for a different approach to building audiences, a different approach to creative, to be able to seize on this customer that's suddenly available but maybe didn't anticipate being available. I think the other thing which I'll point out is that at this particular moment in time, it's often the case that media is on sale. So it suddenly becomes a lot more attractive for performance marketers to be able to engage this customer, to be able to generate a response. For some orientation, Mountain is a self-serve connected television advertising platform that's built for performance marketers. And so the best customers that we've seen, and we'll give a couple of examples here in a moment, treat this period as a unique moment in time because of this windfall that happens, this massive amount of cash that's available. Also, by the way, some of these customers are thinking about returning things that they weren't particularly fond of getting over the holidays. They're seeing that there is this terrific opportunity for getting a deal on media to reach them. And the companies that plan around this moment are very deliberate about maintaining the momentum that they establish in Q4, especially around the things that they've learned to bring that into Q5 and hit the ground running come January 1.
Okay. So then what steps can brands implement to take advantage of this Q5 mentality and maximize the opportunities at the start of 2024?
I'll describe how some of the best customers on our platform appear to do it. And for those of you who are practiced or familiar in some way with performance marketing, the levers that I'll describe here are not new. They involve primarily creative and audience strategy. And so let's start with audiences. the most successful brands in connected television advertising that have a particular performance outcome or orientation think first about defining clearly how the audience has shifted from Q4 to Q5. And they're thinking about people who will respond to, I'll describe it as sort of New Year's resolution-y kinds of messages, who see for themselves maybe January 1 as a starting point. Like, this is a new year. I'm going to do this professionally. I'm going to get this done health and fitness-wise, et cetera.
We have a couple of slides. Do you want to call any of those up now?
In a moment. Yeah, we'll get to those. Because there are a couple of examples that really speak to that. So starting with audience, I think, is really, really critical. And then also thinking about people who may not know your brand. I mean, it's a whole new opportunity to do prospecting and to reach customers who are ready for a handshake. Then the second piece, which we certainly think about, is the creative. And the best way that I can describe, having seen the creatives that change from these brands, that go from Q4 to Q5, if I can simplify their creative strategy shift in a single sentence, it's that they go from creative that tends to be all about everybody else, hey, get this thing for your loved ones, your family, et cetera, to it's all about you. Mm-hmm. And so the creative idea shifts to celebrating the individual and giving them permission through the creative to indulge, to take that first step towards a better year. And really, those are the two big levers. The third, which comes up an awful lot that we see over and over again in the way that they deploy audiences and creative, is that they commit to both prospecting new customers, because again, they know that there are customers out there who just got a gift card and they're looking at this thing and going, wow, this is super generous, I have no idea what this brand is. And then also, but retargeting. So it's an opportunity to retarget, re-engage, remarket to customers who may have visited a website in Q4, but now with a different creative message. It's saying it's not about visiting our website and buying our product or learning about our product so that you can become the hero on Christmas morning, and so that this is for you. And so putting those things together, prospecting plus retargeting, rethinking your creative, and rethinking your audience strategy, we see this time and again. These are the common ingredients to the brands that are most successful. And we do have a couple of examples. If we can pull up the first, and then I'll cue on to the second.
Yeah, so the first one for Tarte?
Yeah, for Tarte.
Tarte Cosmetics, okay.
So this is a cosmetics brand, and cutting to the chase, their Q1 this year, by one metric, was significantly bigger than their Q4. And for Q4 from last year. And so their approach really involved a commitment very early on to testing new audiences. They to their credit, they did not come in with the eggnog haze. They hit the ground running to determine which audiences were going to respond to a particular new product line which itself accompanied by a creative message that was all centered on the concept of glow up, and so they had this new product. They were ready to hit it with promotional dollars. They had new creative centered around this theme, which is very much in line with sort of a new year, new you kind of an approach. And they hammered it early on to determine, okay, which audiences are going to respond to this. Now, the slide mentions an outcome called a verified visit. This is a Mountain proprietary definition of a website visit that is attributable to connected television advertising, exposure to a connected television advertisement that is not accompanied by exposure to or action from, or I should say action from, any other channel. So in other words, when we define a verified visit, it is a visit to a website that happened after exposure to an ad that was viewable, and that did not happen from someone clicking a paid search ad or a paid social ad. And so what we saw here was, going from December into early February, a massive surge in site visits as a result of Tarte's campaigns, and that by March they were riding a whole new peak. So it's evidence, and by the way, this is a brand I suppose you could say kind of makes sense for being a great candidate for Q5. but probably not as like, well, the head slap, a forehead slapping example is the next one, which we're going to show, which is a blinded case study involving, why don't we go to the next one, of a fitness. I mean, this is an obvious candidate. Like, any brand in this category is going to be a terrific candidate for really seizing on a Q5 moment.
But you would normally think of this as a traditional Q1 because people think about, like you say here, new year, new you. That's what people are into: fitness, New Year's resolutions, et cetera, right? So how is that different? And walk us through it, but how is it different with the Q5 mentality as opposed to the traditional Q1 approach?
So, great question, John. So the distinction here was that they started their Q5 and Q4. So they actually began trying to determine who were those most likely customers to convert with a Q5 message by doing outreach and engagement in Q4. And they started adding in and weaving in very seamlessly into their evergreen advertising, which they do all the time because they're always prospecting for new members. They seamlessly wove in this new year, new you type of message, which I think we've all seen from fitness clubs. But it was the timing of it and the seamlessness of it that really made a difference. And then they immediately started driving in and weaving in promos to drive people, to get people through the door. And you can see the kind of impact they had in terms of their cost per acquisition from prospecting, from retargeting, and their return on ad spend. Significant improvement across the board. But it was, again, I think, so much of marketing and advertising is momentum based. And if marketers wait until the moment when customers are ready to act, they're too late. The brands that we see successful, in these two case studies as exemplars of that, were thinking it through, probably starting sometime in like late October of Q4. They were already mapping out what Q5 was going to look like, so that by the time January 1 rolled around, they weren't playing catch up with anything.
So, okay, you mentioned CTV before. So what are the unique CTV opportunities that a Q5 strategy offers?
Well, I mentioned the tendency, and we've seen this on our platform as well, is that media prices tend to decline.
Right.
It's still very premium. It's a premium environment. And so but you tend to see a lot of advertisers say, well, that's not for us, so they back out. And so in that moment, you can get a much more favorable pricing arrangement. At the same time, a lot of customers have just been gifted a subscription to a streaming service, or they decided this is the year we're going to cut the cord. And so you have a surge of people who suddenly become actively engaged in this medium that may be new to them.
So lower CPM, more audience from the get-go.
Yeah, it is a great opportunity for brands. And I would submit it's a great opportunity for brands who may not previously identified as being one that could really kill it in Q5, but with a different approach to how they think about audiences and how they think about creative. I think there's a killing to be had here.
And you mentioned verified visits before as being something that Mountain does specifically. How do you quantify that? How can you tell that it is coming directly from somebody watching a CTV platform?
So we're able, first of all, to work with advertisers to get a pixel placed on their website. We're then able to know when an ad has been served into a particular household, and then able to know when a user who was exposed to an ad that was fully viewable then took an action on an advertiser's website, all the way down to the product that they ordered or the product page that they visited. And we're the only provider that has an integration with Google Analytics 4. So an advertiser doing this can see right alongside their other channels, they can see the impact that they're getting from connected TV.
Okay, and just a short period of time we have left. What next steps can advertisers take to ensure that they're set up for success with the clock strikes 12 and New Year's Eve?
Right. So we've got a slide here that will encapsulate that. So it really it starts with a focus on your audience, as it always does for marketers, is to really rethink who is your audience, and hopefully have developed a learning from Q4 to understand how that audience has evolved. And then update your creative with an understanding that maybe your creative is no longer about how your product or service is going to make the buyer a hero on that holiday, to all about celebrating the buyer. It's all about you. and then making sure to weave in prospecting and retargeting to keep the momentum going.
All right. Well, Matt Collins, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.